Hot Licks, the world leader in video and audio music instruction, now helps you be the best you can be with lessons by some of the biggest stars in music today. No matter what instrument you play, regardless of your level, you simply can't help but improve with these incredible jam-packed tapes. You'll find that Hot Licks videos are of the highest visual and audio quality and feature helpful items such as split screen, extreme close-ups, and even though you don't have to read music to learn from any of these tapes, most feature the music and tablature right on the screen. Don't be fooled by our imitators. Hot Licks is the original, and we are dedicated to always bringing you the best in tape musical instruction. Let the best make you better on the tapes that really teach. Hot Licks.
Hi everybody again. This is Stuart Hamm here. I'd like to welcome you to my second instructional tape for Hot Licks video. This tape we're going to explore in a little more detail, a little more complicated aspects of my playing. For the more advanced students, I'm sure you'll get a lot out of this. I think for the more beginning players out there, it's definitely worth checking out my first video, Slap, Pop, and Tap for the bass. Because in that video, we talk a lot more about the basics, the techniques that we're going to expand on here. So if you haven't checked that out, I think you ought to go ahead and give it a listen and a look. First, we're going to warm up. I think it's really important to stay loose when you're playing. I myself have had some really bad wrist problems that have been hurting me for the last 2 or 3 years. I got advice from a fellow bass player and good friend of mine, Billy Sheehan, and ended up at the Gordon Chiropractic Institute in Hollywood. They fixed me right up. The point is that if you're having problems with your wrists, you should go ahead and get it checked out, because if you put it off, you could end up injuring yourself for life. So it's really important to warm up and relax your hands. One thing to do, first with the wrists, is to just spend a lot of time slowly putting them back and forth and around like this in both directions to loosen them up, and shaking them out to make sure they're good and loose when you're playing. And any time when you're playing and you start to tighten up, certainly stop and shake out your hands and work around them so they'll stay nice and loose and hot. The other good thing to do is to use a rubber band that I happen to have in my pocket. Put them around your fingers like this and open up like this. You can do it with each finger as well. Another good thing to do is to get a tennis ball and squeeze it like this. The important thing is is to always make sure your hands are nice and warm when you're playing, and not to try to just pick up the bass and start playing as fast as you can. Okay, now to loosen up the left hand, I'm just going to show you a few little techniques that I've used. One is a scale working with chromatic scale, basically. And we'll be starting on the C, and basically it'll be played like this. Once again, a little faster. That's just a basic exercise to try to get your left hand fingers just to get warmed up and around the frets. Before we start playing, let's make sure we're all in tune. So I'm going to give you some long tones so you can tune your basses with mine so it will sound wonderful. First, your top G. The D. Your A. And the low E. Okay, I'm going to go with the G major 7 arpeggio. Now, anytime you practice this, or in fact anything, I believe it's very important to use a metronome. There are some licks that inherently are easier to play fast than slowly. If this is the case, this is a sure flaw in your technique. I think the really good way to practice is to go through your repertoire and find stuff like that that's easy to play fast, but you have problems playing it slowly. These are the things that you need to work on very slowly. I mean, that's the way you practice, is to take something that you think you could never play that will be impossible, and start out by working it out, the fingering, and then playing it slowly every day. And set your metronome marking, and then every day speed it up a little bit. By this constant rote, obviously you're not going to get worse at it, it's going to get better. And so you should always use the metronome. Another reason is because it will grain the beat in your head, and God knows there are very few drummers out there that you can count on to keep a straight beat. So, let's go on and start with the G major 7 arpeggio. The way this works is, we play the G and the B, the major 3rd, and then for the 5th, we play the open D. At this point, we jump up to the 9th fret, which will be the major 7th, the F sharp, and then the 10th fret for the G, and then play the arpeggio up here of G, B, D, F sharp, and G. So that would work like this. Now we can do the same thing with the C major 7 arpeggio, this time playing the C on the A string, and the 3rd, the D on the D string, and then using the open G as a jumping up point, playing the B natural on the 14th fret, and your C again on the A string on the 15th fret, and playing the arpeggio up there. Of course, the idea is when you play the open string, this allows your left hand to move up and immediately be in position to play the upper part of the scale. And then playing the open string again, at that point moving your hand back down. So let's play the C major 7 arpeggio. Now, for the dominant 7th arpeggios, it's basically the same thing, but instead of playing a major 7th, which would be F sharp to G, the G, you play the dominant 7th, or flatted 7th, F natural. So that scale would work like this. And on the C, dominant seventh arpeggio, basically the same idea. Now when you get these two going, you can alternate by adding both of them together, like this. So these are just a few things that I think you could use that might help to help you warm up. Again, I think it's very important. I have a certain, probably about 5 to 10 minute set of scales, arpeggios, hand exercises that I do every day immediately when I first pick up the bass. I think for each of you it would be a good thing to work out a little technique, a little thing like that, and just to make it very sure that you do the same thing every time. You get into the habit of doing it. It'll warm up your hands, you won't hurt yourself. And developing good practice habits is something that every musician needs. And again, always working with the metronome. And there's no key, really there's no secret to getting good. It just takes a lot of hard work and practice. The best teachers that I've had have been people that have just pointed you in the right direction, because you can't really teach anyone anything. You have to learn it for yourself. But if you get pointed in the right direction and get past the frustration level of your mistakes, then practicing is such a great thing. Because I think we're lucky in that, you set yourself a goal. Like when I first started tapping, and I said I'm going to learn the Linus and Lucy Peanuts thing. And I thought to myself, boy, when I learn that, I'm really going to have accomplished something. I'll have reached something. I'll have made it. Then when I learned to play that, I realized that it's just the tip of the iceberg to a whole new set of techniques. So practicing increases exponentially as you keep going. I think that we as musicians are very lucky. And there's no substitute for just hard work and practice if you want to improve. The next section of this tape is going to deal with harmonics. People have been playing harmonics for years and years. I believe it was Stanley Clarke and then, of course, the great Jaco Pastorius that really brought bass harmonics to the forefront. There are lots of different ways to play harmonics, from just the natural harmonics to pinched harmonics to false harmonics. I like to go over those and give a basic overview of them because I believe that it's something that every modern bassist should have a handle on how to play them. So at this point, I'm just going to play a piece with apologies to Jaco Pastorius and a portrait of Tracy, and then we're going to begin talking about different ways to use and play harmonics. Okay, harmonics. Basically, these are overtones of the strings. These are notes that you can play without actually fretting down or pushing down on the bass. Now, in theory, the way this works is between the bridge and the neck joint, halfway between is going to be the octave. So on your 12th fret, on the G string, if you play the G, but if you just put your finger a little bit on it and pluck the string, you're going to get the same note. So it's not playing it, it's actually just putting your finger a little bit on top of the string and playing the G. So up there on the 12th fret, we have the natural octave, the D on the D string, the A on the A string, and of course, our old friend, the E on the E string. Now, halfway between this octave and the neck, in either direction, we're going to get the fifth. On this case, it's the same note you play. On the G, if you finger the D, the harmonic, which is right on the fret there, is going to be the D as well. Conversely, if you go between the 12th fret to the bridge, the D is going to be the same. Now, from there, if you play the C on the G string, you're going to get a higher octave. You're going to get the G again. So, you've got your octave on the 12th fret, 7th fret, you've got your 5th, and then an octave higher on the 5th fret. It works the same way going the other direction. Now, if you play your 4th fret, which is going to be the B, this is all on the G string still, but it works the same, different chords in the other strings. You have a third, and this is the same harmonic there when you play that harmonic. So, if you wanted to play the next note above that, if you finger on the 3rd fret, you've got your 5th again. So, there are other harmonics that you can get above this. For instance, above that, you've got a 7th. It's not actually on the fret, and above that you've got another octave, the G. Those are really hard ones to define, so we're going to stick mostly with just the octave, 3rd, and 5th. So by using all 4 strings across, and these 3 frets, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th frets, we can get a scale going, starting on the E string, the G sharp, and with these, there's a lot of interesting chords you can make. Let's start with, say, a G. You fret your low G, play your G here, the 5th fret on the G string, and then the 5th fret on the D string will give you a D, so you'll have the root on the bottom and harmonics of the root and 5th. You could also play a major 7th chord by playing the G on the G string and the F sharp on the D string. That's got a lot of tension to it. You can also play, finger your low G, play your D, and B. Or you can play a 7th chord with the F sharp and the B. You can get a real nice chords with the C. Again, you can play C and your G and a D to get the C9 chord. If you go down here, you can play the low E as well. Or you can play your D, B natural, and E. These are just a few of the chords that you can use. Of course, there's Jocko's old favorite. And by just experimenting, you know, it might help you to make out a chart. There are charts available of harmonics. And going through and finding different ways to finger notes and use the other strings to create chords. Now, there are other ways to create harmonics besides just this. There's one way called pinching harmonics. This is another thing that our friend Jaco Pastorius made famous. The theory is the same, being that an octave up is going to give you the harmonic. So what we would do is say you're fingering a C here. If you play the harmonic, an octave up from the C is going to give you the harmonic. Now there are two ways to do this. One is to hit the harmonic with your thumb. Have your thumb above this fret, an octave up from the note you want to play, and pluck the note with either your first or second finger. Remember, you're not fretting the note, you're just actually holding it on the string. Another way to do it is to have your finger covering it and plucking it with one of the other fingers. So, again, you find the note you want to play, find where it's going to be an octave up from that, and you have to move your right hand along with it. So if you're playing a C, you finger the C down here, finger the C down there, play the false harmonic C an octave up. Your next note, the D, you have to move your hand up. E. Now, besides getting the octave, you can get twice the octave or the fifth. So say you're playing your C again. If you put your hand above where the G is, you get a fifth above the note. And if you finger it there, you get the octave above it. Another way to get harmonics that I've used is by, instead of holding the string like that and plucking it, you can actually just tap down on the string and you will get the same effect. So say I'm fingering my C. If I just tap on the C above it, the harmonic will ring up. Some of you might recognize that from a piece called Surely the Best, from my second album on Relativity, Radio Free Album. And you might remember that one of the two bass parts in the beginning went like this. And of course, the idea of as you get closer together, shorten the length between the note you play and the octave you play. Again, you're going to get the fifth and the octave again. So if I finger the C and play the C, I've got an octave. If I finger the C and play a G, I've got the fifth. If I finger the C and play on the F, I've got the octave. So you could play. Another way harmonics can be used is the thing called sliding harmonics. Now this works a lot better on a fretless bass, and people such as Percy Jones and Bunny Burnell have really almost made a career out of playing these kind of things. However, it can be done. Don't let people tell you it can't, because it can be done on a fretted bass as well. Now the basic technique of this is you play the harmonic, and then after you play it, Then you put your finger down on the fret and move it up. Then actually the sound of the harmonic will slide up. So if we hit our G, then we push the finger down on the fret and slide it down, say to an E. Or up to the A. Now of course, since that is the same octave as the note you play, it doesn't sound that different. But if we play the D on the 7th fret, which is an octave higher, and slide it up, or slide it down, and this way you can make a lot of nice chords too, just by sliding one note down. So it's kind of harder as the notes get higher to make it work. But like I said, you just hit the string and move it up. This may take a little practice, but I'm sure you'll be able to get it, and it will add a lot to, I think, your harmonic playing. The next part of this videotape, I'd like to examine in a little more detail some of the more complex slapping and tapping techniques that I do, and ways to combine them, and ways that I've used them in my music. Now to do this, first of all, there's a few things that we need to work on that I think are good exercises in general. The first thing we need is popping with 2 fingers at the same time. So we're going to be playing thirds in the key of G. So we'll be playing the G on the D string with our first finger, and with our third finger, the B on the G string. And we're playing them at the same time. No flams will be allowed, so I advise you to practice this slowly, and so you can get them to ring out at the same time. Then we'll be playing the minor third in the key of G with the A and the C, and then a minor third again with the B and the D. First we'll be playing these in whole note figures, then half note figures, and then as quarter notes. So I advise you to practice this at various tempos, starting from the very slow, to get to wherever you can play it fast, and have both notes ring out simultaneously and sound like one note. Now, one place where I've utilized this technique is in a song called Sexually Active. It's on my first album, Radio Free Album, on Relativity Records. And in this funk popping technique, we also use some of the techniques that we worked on and used in my first videotape, Slap, Pop, and Tap with Stuart Hamm, on Hot Licks videos, available at finer record music stores everywhere. So, the way this lick works is, we start off with thumbing our A on the E string and hammering onto a B. Then we move up to do the same thing on the next string, striking the D, hammering on to the E. Going back, doing the same thing on the E string. Then playing our open E. Then we're popping a series of fourths. First would be an A and a D on the D and G string. Then we hit the low E again. Then we're popping the B and the E. Then we go back and do the hammer-ons again. And then hitting the open E. Then we move up in consecutive fourths from the B and the D, A and the D, sorry, B and the E, up to the D and the G. Okay, so now that we know the elements of this lick, let's try to put them together in the context of the song and the riff itself. Now this is one of those licks that sometimes is easier to play fast. one of the reasons this is because when it goes by so quick, it's easy to mask a lot of mistakes. And if you take the time to work this stuff out very slowly and precise, when you get it up to speed, it will be incredibly tight, not sloppy. So I want to start this very, very slow, and we'll work up. And again, I can't stress enough how important it is to do this with everything you play, so that it's nice and tight and clean, and when you get it up to speed, it's not slop. So let's try this lick very slowly. See, it's even hard for me to hold it back down. But now let's try it, speed it up just a little bit. And let's try it a little quicker. So if you take the time to practice this slow and neat and cleanly, by the time you work it up fast, you'll have it under your fingers and it'll sound great. Moving on, I'd like to discuss now a little more of the tapping techniques. To illustrate this, I'd like to play a piece and then go through and show you how to play some of the pieces yourself, some of the parts of the piece yourself. So I'd like to perform a piece from my second album entitled Kings of Sleep. This piece is called Terminal Beach. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about the techniques involved with this. For the main verse, the first part, your left hand is playing a series of fifths, starting on the 12th fret with the E, then going F sharp to G. As again, with all tapping, you want to hit the notes straight down, because if you hit them across a little bit, you're going to bend them out of tune. So you try to arch your fingers and hit straight down. So again, the rhythm on the bottom would be and against that, we have the right hand playing fourths, starting on the E and the B. We play this fourth, and then playing the E and the A, we slide up, do a little pull up there, and when you combine the two together, and as you see on the last note, you not only play the fifth on the G, but you have to also play the other octave so that you can pull off and get the riff. Now let's try this very slowly with the metronome. See how hard it is to play slow? But again, it's going to make it cleaner in the long run. Let's try it just a little faster now, shall we? And once more, a little faster. See how nice and clean it can be if you take the time to practice it slowly. Because if you practice it fast all the time, you're just practicing your mistakes. Now, the second half of this piece is a little more complicated. It's using, the first part is an F sharp minor. And with the left hand, we're again starting with the root and the fifth. And our right hand, we're playing the third, the seventh, and then alternating between the second and the fourth. And they work, it's going to be a little complicated at first, until you get the fingering, the hand pattern down. But slowly it works like this. You can see the music rolling by, you'll be able to practice it yourself. Let's try this a little bit with the metronome. When you get the hang of it, you'll get the rhythm of it really kind of swings. And it'll be might be very complicated at first, but when you get the rhythm of it, it'll be a piece of cake. The next part of it goes down to an F Lydian, F major with a sharp 4. It's basically the same rhythm pattern, but you're playing an F and a C on the bottom and playing a natural G on top of that. So that second part of the line would sound like this. After that, we go back to our original lick in F sharp, and the last lick is, again, pretty much the same fingering pattern, but in the key of G. So now we're going to combine all the pieces, and I'll play the whole second half of the verse very slowly with the click track. It may seem kind of frustrating practicing it that slow, but believe me, that's the only way to get it where it will be tight. Now I'd like to show you a piece called Count Zero off my second album, Kings of Sleep. In this piece, we expand a little bit on the flamenco or rake technique that we worked on my previous video, and also we start to combine some of the popping and the tapping techniques. So first, I'd like to play the piece for you, show you some of the licks, and show you some exercises that you will need to work on to be able to play this piece nicely and evenly. So without further ado, here is Count Zero. talk about a couple of techniques that we need to play this piece. The first thing we need to do is to be able to play octaves or thumbs and fingers perfectly evenly in all the middle part where I was playing stuff like it's important to get those perfectly even. So again, we're going to start really slowly. What we're going to be doing is playing a C major scale with a C on top, and in the bottom just playing the first 5 notes. C, C, then moving up to the D, up to the E, F, the B, the G, and then back down. And again, we'll start it really slowly, so when you get it fast, it'll be nice and even. Now, let's try it again faster. And again, faster. And let's see how it sounds. See if I can play it at this tempo. So if you take the time and work it up like that, you'll be able to play it fast and even, just like that. Now the main lick of this piece in the verses is again uses our triplet, a flamenco kind of a thing, where we use the first finger and second fingers to play 2 notes, but not actually plucking them, but rolling our finger over. So we're playing a triplet with the first triplet, so we're hitting the open E, and then the triplet of the E, B, D. Then you come back down and hit that same E with your thumb, and snapping up on the next high B on the G string. The second half of this moves to the key of G, G minor. So we're fingering the G, and we're striking that, and then we're playing the B and the E again, and we're kind of half muting the low B natural and playing a B flat on the top. So let's try both these licks together slowly with the click. let's try it a little faster. A little faster, almost up to tempo. I predict this is going to be one of the licks you're going to have the most trouble with, playing slow. But don't worry, if you get past the frustration, you got nothing to worry about. The final lick I'd like to show you that I use in this piece combines not only the rake or flamenco across, but also some tapping. And this is the line that I use going into the bridge at the end of all the setting up the verses. Fast, this lick is like this. So like that one? The way that works now is we're playing fourths across, starting on the E, fretting your A and your D. And again, we're doing the same triplet with the rollover. And we're coming back down after we play the D, and thumbing the D, hammering on up to an E. Then, while we're hammering on, the right hand is free to move up. It taps down on the E and the B. Then the left hand moves up while that hand is playing that, frets the G. Then we play a C sharp and a G with our right hand, an E with our left hand, and then another C sharp to give us an E minor 6 chord. It's one of the first ways we can use to integrate the two techniques. So, let me set up the machine, and we'll try this slowly. Try a little faster. And a little faster again. There you have three main components that I use to write the song Count Zero. I'd like to take a minute here to just talk about technique. All this tapping stuff is great. I've been fortunate in my career to have solo albums out and also working with a couple bands such as Joe Satriani where I got to use some of this technique. But I was never in a hurry just to play something for technique's sake, because the music should create the technique, not the other way around. The way I came up with a lot of these techniques was because I heard music in my head. I was working up piano music like the Moonlight Sonata. I'd reach a point and I'd say, how can I possibly play this note? And I'd have to invent a technique of, say, using my thumb to stop notes or whatever. And that's so necessity being the mother of invention, because music is not about fast E pentatonic licks. Music is about emotions and feelings. And the reason you need to practice and play scales is so you can eliminate all the technical difficulties and go right ahead and play, just, communicate what's in your heart and your soul. So don't get too caught up in technique, because remember, the worst thing you can say to a bass player is, you sound like a frustrated lead guitar player. Or, say you get the call to audition for Madonna, a gig that pays probably about $25,000 a week, and you show up and go, you'll be playing that stuff in the bedroom for the rest of your life. So, As I say, let the music be the most important thing, and the technique comes second, and that way you're bound to be successful. Have you ever had the distinct pleasure of having to drive across Texas in the middle of the night? Actually make it a couple nights. It was during a night like this when it was 4 a.m. and there's bugs the size of B-52s landing off the windshield. It was 90 degrees. We'd been in Texas for about a day and a half, and we saw a sign that said Amarillo, 500 miles. Well, anyway, these were all the inspirations that led me to write a song called Lone Star. For that and all my good friends in Texas. On guitar on this song, I happened to persuade a friend of mine, a man by the name of Eric Johnson, to play some guitar on it, and a good friend of mine, Steve Smith. And this was probably the strongest cut on my last album, the only of my 3 albums that I haven't plugged yet on this video, an album called The Urge on Relativity Records. This song got quite a bit of airplay, so you might have heard it before, and I thought as an ending, I would like to show you the main bass hook from this that, again, uses a lot of the techniques that we've talked about before. So the first part of the hook here, or the chorus, is the popping in thirds. In this case, the notes are going to be B and D, down to an A and C, and then that down to a G and a B. You notice you do kind of slide down there on the second part. The next part of this lick uses hammer-ons using the open strings, in this case, the open G. So we're playing a B, hammering on up to the B and pulling off to the open G, then hitting a D, hammering on up to the E, pulling off to the open string again, and going up to the A. Then we go back again to the initial lick, pulling the 2 notes at the same time. Then there comes an interesting lick. It's a little bit like the lick we did there at the end of Count 0, which uses the raking across as well as some tapping pull-ons and pull-offs. We're fingering basically an F6 here, which would be an F, your C on the next string, on the D, and on the top string with your first finger, the D. And again, you're playing the triplet. Then we're hammering on with our 4th finger up to the F. So the first part will be. Then we're just going to outline an F major up here, hitting the A, pulling off to the F, pulling off down to the D, hammering on up again to the F, playing an F natural, pulling off, up to the C. So we have and the last of it's quicker, it's a real triplet. So slowly that lick would be. Then we move up a whole step and do the same lick in the key of G. But this time we don't play the lick of it, the triplet lick, the fast at the end. We just hang on the top D there. So slowly, without the machine, the whole chorus would sound like. Again, these are probably going to be the 2 licks that give you the most trouble, so I'll just go over it slowly one more time. If it helps you out, stop the tape and work out each segment separately. And I advise you do this. Let's go ahead and try it really slowly with the machine, putting all these parts together in the song. it up a little, shall we? There you have it, Lone Star, the big bass hit from Stu Hamm and the new album, The Urge, available on Relativity Records. I'd like to thank all the fine people here in the studio and Alan for letting me do this second video. I'd also like to thank the people at Hartkey for the fine bass equipment I use, speakers, amplifiers, and heads. The people at Fender and the Fender Custom Shop for helping me design this new bass that you're seeing. The people at GH Strings for endorsing me, making some of the best strings out there, in my estimation. And the good people at Yamaha for letting me use their Yamaha SY77 keyboard and sequencer. There's a little Vanna White shot here. There you go. And again, I hope, probably once again on this tape, I've tried to cover a little too much material and probably spoken a little too fast at some points. But that's why they have rewind buttons on videotapes. And what I wanted to do with this tape was just to add on to the first tape we did and to give people a lot to think about and work on. So I hope that this helps you out. And again, practice a lot. Make sure you play everything steady. Don't practice your mistakes. And don't let technique be your master. And just go out there and make music. So, thanks a lot, and we'll see you later.